Alright, first one. Frapupu. Very well done.
Yeah, what I like about it is it's a lot of fun with the big shapes. So this is a fig, and the fig shape is quite obvious. So that's really, really positive. And she has that royal feel to it, and I do feel that the fig is a bit more of a royal fruit, and that showcases quite well with this character design. The color is a strong element that essentially frames the head, and then you have the cool fig seeds around the arms. I won't say too much. What's your comments?
Yeah, the hierarchy of color choices I think is great because the brightest thing that pops out when you first look at the image is the face. And then it's sort of nicely balanced with then the huge fig shape underneath. Like there's no doubt when I looked at it that what fruit it was. And also this is quite fun because this fruit, like this character exists in a world of fruit. And so she's not just attired with entirely fig related things. She's got a watermelon purse, which I think is really fun. Because it's kind of like I would wear clothing that I find interesting, and that's not going to be everything related to me. It's going to be things that are different to me. So she likes watermelons, so she's wearing a watermelon purse instead of everything being related to the fig, and that's quite fun.
Yeah.
This is just a bunch of really nice call-outs to the textures of the fig, like the soft squishy stuff around the lapels of her coat, and then the seeds going down the arms. Yeah, in general, lovely stuff. Really beautiful piece.
Any constructive criticism?
Right. So firstly, I like this dog. I think its tail is fantastic. I find the mouth really it's creepy in a cool way. But I think the thing that just throws me is that it doesn't look like it goes anywhere because you can see the end of the mouth. I think his face sort of detracts. Like the rest of it feels kind of polished and I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like she has a very regal feel. She looks very proper, and then the little dog squirrel thing is kind of derpy in comparison. And I think it spoils the tone somewhat.
It has a butterfly on its.
It has a little butterfly, which is fun. But yeah, I think it's just his face that sort of spoils the tone. And then otherwise, I think there's like the use of the fig elements could possibly have been sort of slightly more universal. So I think I like the use of fig in the hair as well, but it's possibly not as obvious at first. Like I think if the texture was more clear, then we'd kind of like link the top and bottom of the design.
That's interesting you pointed out because I didn't see it until you said it.
Yeah, and then I actually looked at the sketch. Well, Matthias pointed out that the line art sketch of this is lovely as well because it has much more of a flow coming down from the head through the hips. And I think it's just stiffened up slightly with the render. So trying to keep those like motion lines going through the piece is really important when you go to rendering it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to point out because the shapes of the color was really strong on the sketch version. Whilst here you pulled it back a little bit and you made it look more uniform. And I think if I were to take it from the sketch to a painting, I would have actually kept that large shape in. But yeah,
because I think there were a lot of flowing lines, and then some of these things like the arm and the line on the back of her body, they've actually been straightened out. They've become straight lines instead of following the curve. So it's very small, subtle things, but in general, lovely. And we're not judging the background as part of it, but I really like the use of color in the background. I think that's great.
Yeah. Overall,
awesome.
Really well done.
Well done. All right, next we have this. This one's so much fun. So it's the stinky jackfruit.
Yeah,
and
by
Leomorphra.
Leomorphra art.
Leomorphra art.
All right.
I think it's a great use of the jackfruit. Like the little description to the side is talking about how her stinky little seed friends help carry her around. And I think it's just really fun that you've got like this character that's too fat to move properly, or her legs are too short to like to allow her to walk, and so the seeds from within they crawl out and they just have to shuffle along. You've also got this little guy who's fallen over in the foreground. So there's a ton of personality in this one, and also I get like a real good sense of depth. Like her whole body is the sort of shape and dimensions of the jackfruit, and you can see like the depth going all the way through, especially where the seeds have popped out from the inside. So it's got that slight sort of grossness to it, which really sells the like very pungent flavor smell of the jackfruit. So I think it's used the elements of that fruit really well in her personality and how that comes through.
I'm also impressed by how you managed to make the image so pleasing, even though you still managed to convey that it's also quite nasty.
Yeah.
Because it could quite easily be very, very yucky, you know, and that could have been very distracting. But yeah, I think it works really well.
Yeah, it could easily have become quite grotesque. So, but yeah, you've balanced it really well. Like the more you look, you constantly see things which push you in either direction. Like she has these little boils and stuff on her legs, and you're like, oh, that's kind of grim. And then you see like the sort of cute, chubby baby face that she has, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cute. And so you get this push and pull, which I think works really well. Which I guess is perfect because you've got people who love the flavor of jackfruit and then people that hate it. So I think it works really well.
I think there's some more comments I have on this. Is I really liked how you reuse some of the elements on as the hat, her arms, and the whole main body. And there's a nice trio happening as well. So you have a good mix of, you know, since the big, I guess the shell of the fruit, which is this green, it's a nice balance that this one takes up most of the image, but you have a nice balance of the shapes, which makes up this trio from like.
And there's a nice clear big, medium, small, isn't there? Because
exactly, yeah.
It's really clear and very appealing because of it. So coming back to making like a lot of shape decisions that are appealing to look at, a lot of it's in how you've used that hierarchy of shape. So yeah. Well done.
Before we move on, any constructive criticism?
Yes, I think for me there's like just small things where I think perspective would have made the seeing through the body even clearer. And I think you tend towards darkness in the shadow of these the large like bulbous areas. They get a bit too dark and it's sort of distracting. And in general with like the values, I'd say that this contrast here between the really dark shadows and the light things around it draw the eye far more than the areas of detail like the face. So I think you need to carefully balance that kind of thing so that the face is the first thing we look at. And then we still show the form with this large value range on the spherical elements, but it's less distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of my comments would be also to have some more gesture in the piece. There is some sense of flow, but it's a bit unclear about where the movement is going or what's happening. I guess what she's kind of doing is being balanced by the seeds, but again, it's a little bit unclear.
Yeah.
So I think I would have throughout the whole character a bit more a more clearly defined movement would be more interesting, I think.
Because I think the central shapes are kind of stacked up vertically. There's a nice sense that these legs are kind of flowing off to the side, so you could kind of go for like a diagonal flow like this. But the because these central elements are stacked vertically, it's then kind of it counters that movement, and it's just a little unclear in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, great stuff. All right, so that was the second one. Let's go. Yes. Good news for bad guys. Fun name.
Yeah.
I feel like that could just be the name of this character, or something like that, or his motto or something. But yeah, he's great. I think the thing here is simplicity of something that we're all so familiar with. Like everyone's held the banana and pretended it's a gun. It's like universal, but I've never seen it used in a character design as effectively as this. And I think it's because it's very difficult to. When I was actually doing the first Froot Peepoh sketches, I did have a banana sketch at one point. I was testing a couple of ideas out, but I gave up halfway through because the banana was such a difficult shape to use. So kudos for making something like this out of it, because I couldn't. I found it too difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a quite fun topic on this one. I really like the banana peel hat or the banana peel face. I don't know. It's like a mix of a hat or like his face, or maybe even a hood. The ambiguity kind of makes it fun as well, and it's also very simple and easy to read. And I can really see this one being used in like an arcade game or in an animation.
Yeah,
so that's a big bonus.
Especially because like in animation, you can see how the movement comes from this design. Like the curls of the banana skin around his face, you'll see them kind of flopping around and slightly uncurling and stuff when he runs. Of course, the actual mechanism of shooting the banana gun is fantastic. I'd love to see how he reloads it, whether he just like chucks it away and gets a new banana out from his pocket or something. But I think that's great. Like that motion of it exploding out and peeling as he fires is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, simplicity is like the key here, and I think you've used it really well. And it's a difficult thing to balance because sometimes when you go for something that's so simplistic, it can be hard to make it impressive at the same time. Matthias and I were discussing this beforehand, and it's kind of like it's something which Disney is incredibly good at. They don't overwhelm you with design in their characters, but everything that's there is so well considered that you never think, oh, this character's a bit boring, because you're constantly distracted by like small details, subtlety in the design that makes it engaging.
And I think this is where a point where I want to chime in and point out that what Disney does really, really well with the lack, or not lack, that would be wrong, but with the simplicity of design and the less detail that they utilize shape, which is extremely pleasing and very easy to look at. And I think that this is what this character kind of needs, is utilizing some shapes that are pushed a little bit further than what it actually is, because right now it has a bit too much of a cylinder feel in all places. So even his arms, his body, his legs, it's all this same shaped cylinder. So just pushing that further could really make or break this character. What do you think?
Yeah, I think similar things where it's sort of certainly at the bottom of the body. I think it might just be in this like the main pose. It starts to become a bit hard to read what's going on, and that might be that his legs are a bit too small in this particular case, or it's just covered up a little too much. But because the whole body is the same internal banana color, you need to make sure that there's like a careful differentiation between shapes so that it's clear what's what, where his legs protrude and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I did make a note of the trousers and the boots being a little bit separated from the character. Now, I did see that on the left-hand side you added a hat. I don't know if that's like canon or not, but it would be. But I think that keeping that hat would have actually unified the character even more, because having one element or one like separate piece of material in a completely like in the end of a character and not having it anywhere else can separate the character. So he has like the banana head, his body, and then he has his trousers and boots. However, he has his trousers on, and then you have the white in his legs, and then comes the boots. So you have at least some blending on.
Yeah, I think the leather might just be sort of too dark and obviously a different material, because it implies leather, and that's unrelated to the banana in many ways. I don't think it's too much of an issue, but if you had the hat on at the top as well, I think it would then tie those together. Whereas with the sweatband, I mean, whenever I see a sweatband, I can only really think of tennis. And so in this case, it just feels like a bit of a wild card anyway. So I think that the hat would have been the better choice to keep on the main character, because it ties together the entire outfit that the banana's wearing. But otherwise, is that all you had? Because I think...
Yeah, that's all my points.
Yeah. Yeah, all these designs are so cool. Big brain. Yeah, I really like this. It's really great fun. And I just want to see more of it. I want to see this in a cartoon, in an animation.
Yeah, he looks a lot of fun, actually. He has a lot of attitude to him.
Yeah. Yeah, you immediately get his personality. All right. Okay, next. We have Florian Becker. So actually, this is a great segue because having just been talking about using simplicity and basically just nailing everything so that it's like there's no questions about the design, this is possibly an even better example of that. Like it's immediately understandable, nothing feels out of place, and it's so wonderfully appealing.
Yeah, I would say the same, honestly. It's got the appeal. There's not too much, but there's enough to keep you interested.
Yeah, like the positioning of all the shapes. It uses all the textures of the fruit. There's absolutely no doubt what fruit it is. And of course it's very fun that it directly takes the pun from the name. Like it's an excellent use of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of what made it for me is the pun. I think also that's also its biggest weakness because it's taken very, very literally and it's not exactly outside the box. And I guess that's also fine. It just depends on how you design it.
Because essentially it's kind of the line it treads is between being too obvious but then executing the idea so well that it's like, well, it's the best way I've seen a dragon fruit turned into a little dragon. So it absolutely, it's fantastic. It's a really great execution of that idea.
Yeah.
And then Matthias and I think we have a bit of a split on our decisions of like what we'd want to see done to sort of improve, because I think I'd want to see it slightly more solid with its rendering, so treating it more like a sphere so that it's clearly rounded. But that's kind of the style that I generally go for.
Yeah. I actually agree with you, but at the same time, there's something about it that I actually quite like, that it feels a bit flat. But that could also be a big drawback for, let's say if you aren't aware that if you actually try to make it feel 3D, which is what it wanted it does feel like you wanted to make it feel 3D, but because of the mouth and because of the way that those spines go behind his back can easily quite make it look flat at the same time. So it has this, it looks like a chunky piece of flat material, kind of like a magnet.
Yeah, it does. It feels like a relief magnet that you can put on the fridge. And maybe that's it. Like this would work really well as one of those very stylized sort of vector feeling drawings where you've got flat colors, maybe with a bit of texture, flat colors to create a piece. So for 2D animation, I think that could have really worked well. And essentially bringing in some of these softer rendering elements that you have here kind of pushes you in a strange, uncanny in between, where it's not. Doesn't feel fully 3D, but then it's also not fully 2D. I think maybe that's just what sort of confuses me slightly about it. But generally, fantastic.
Yeah, I don't have any more comments, so I quite like this one. So.
Okay, what do we have next? Poco art. Yes, the pineapple wizard.
Yeah, I thought this one was a lot of fun. The main thing that I thought of when I looked at this piece was Bowser from Super Mario for some reason, because it's just a big chunky character and it's got obviously the spikes, and I suppose it's the green as well kind of does it for me, and a bit of the yellow. But I don't know if this is a good guy or a bad guy. It kind of looks like he's a bit bad, He
does look a bit bad, yeah. Especially because he's got the pineapple equivalent of those like I think it's a Dungeons and Dragons enemy, one of those classic ones where it's a giant eyeball with like tentacles coming out the back. It's got the pineapple equivalent of those flying around, so they immediately feel like evil monsters to me. But yeah, your thoughts on it looking like Bowser, to me it feels like it's an iconic character.
Yeah, that's probably what I was trying to say. Which
I get the feeling like I've seen him before, or like I know him from a franchise or something like that. And I think everything in the design fits together really nicely. And it just, it immediately reads, it tells you its character, like what it would do in a story, and then also there's this really fun personality to it. So
I think a lot of the things I think one of the main things that also made us like this piece a lot is that it has a twist on the expectation of the shapes that would be used. So, usually you would think an oval sort of looking ball shape, but you actually used a cube shape for his head and for the little minions, and as well as some other areas of his body, and that surprised us.
Yeah, I think it's really fun because you've simplified a pineapple down to like an abstracted version of its patterns. So you've simplified the actual texture on the outside to fairly clear kite shapes, and then I like on the staff as well, you've simplified it to those zigzags, and so we get like a stylized version of a pineapple then applied to a character, and that wedge cuboid shape that you've used throughout I just find really appealing. I think it's really fun.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the other character did the same thing, but this one also does it the same. And it just uses the color scheme that's already with the Froot. So it uses the the green and the yellow and the white.
Yeah.
So it's quite cool. Any
so yeah, I mean, essentially the only thing is the use of metal. I think is the only thing that feels slightly out of place, where the metal shoulder pads, and I think it might be that the spikes make sense as like you have a spiky Froot. So what spiky armor would you use? Well, spiked shoulder pads. But then it's use of the other elements you get from sort of standard armor with like the trim going around the outside. That starts to feel out of place because it's not really referenced anywhere else in the design, I don't think. And since the entire character otherwise is really made of pineapple parts, I think it comes close to breaking that feeling of pineapple overall.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, but I think that's about it, really.
Yeah, I actually have one more comment, and that's a more of a technical one. I think what you can do to make this character pop out more, and just work on your line art. Just push it a little bit further. Press harder in some other areas, and then I actually kind of like the lost lines that they have in the stomach. That's actually a smart choice. And then you have more of the texture coming in on the arms. But I would like some more line variation. Yeah,
it'd be nice to have some heavier lines around here to separate this forearm from the back. But yeah, it's a good point. I actually hadn't commented on that. The lost edges here are lovely. All right, great work, Hoko. And next, and Babu. All right, yeah. So I think this might have been my favorite for a long time. And I think that's mostly from its aesthetic. The render on this might be my favorite of all of them. I love the soft colors and like how you can like really feel the 3D, the bumps in the material of the face and that kind of thing. I think it's really lovely. Matthias?
Yeah, I would say the same. Yeah, I'd say the same. Honestly, the render is really slick and clean and nice, and even though you have a lot. Well, it's not even that much, but there's quite a lot of elements happening, but you managed to control a lot of them quite nicely and not over render in some areas. You actually left some areas a little bit more, you still rendered them and rounded them up, but you didn't add a necessary detail essentially. And you added most of the detail around the face and the upper body. And that's a big bonus.
Yeah, like the pieces down here, these really sort of, they're great for making sure that you look at the face, which has the detail first. And then for me, there's just a bunch of really nice shape design. I love the flow of the leaves coming down from the top. And then smaller things like the progression of these big, small to tiny triangles on the outside of the shape, just like in the silhouette itself. I think it's lovely, and like the inclusion of these little negative spaces. These make it really appealing. They don't distract because they're not too complex. I generally just really like the distribution of shapes throughout it.
Yeah. And then I would say then there are, my criticism to that is that then you suddenly break that shape language in, say, the skirt and the scarf and that's laying on the ground can suddenly kind of break it a little bit more for me. And that's also the material of the skirt doesn't. When I look at the what do you call it, the jacket that's purple, and then I feel like it's supposed to continue down with the skirt, but it suddenly the skirt is a different material, and I see it as a different thing. Would you say that also?
Yeah, it's sort of confusing because it implies that the top jacket must end up here before a skirt continues underneath.
Yeah.
I found that a little confusing, but in general, the use of these different materials in the costume, they don't, to me, communicate anything specific about the material, and they don't really relate to the original Froot either. So I sort of find the more I scrutinize those areas of it, and like the placement of these buttons, which starts to feel almost arbitrary, like they don't really have an obvious purpose, they feel a bit random. I kind of like how it mimics the random placement of the seeds in the weapon up here, but I don't think it fits quite as well. So for me, it's the choice of materials and the actual construction of the clothing. I don't think relates to the rest of the design so much.
Yeah, I think that this design, when you first take a look at it, it really grabs your attention and it's really strong, especially even the pose and the render. But then when you take a further look into it, I think some of the story and the material, it starts to kind of fall apart again. So just making sure that you tie everything together can really make this character really strong.
Yeah, because essentially, like our main criticism is sort of we can't find the answers to the questions of like where does the blue striped scarf kind of fit in, and where does the purple cloak fit in. But otherwise, yeah, in terms of just pure visuals, I think this might be my favorite in terms of render. I think it's wonderfully appealing, and the character is so endearing.
Yeah, I would say this one was, I think at this point, like Ambablu and the following artists, I mean, it got really difficult to figure out.
It's really tough.
Yeah, exactly. So this one was a really close call. So really good job.
Great stuff. All right, and next, I think this might actually just be a crop. Yeah, so this is the larger crop with the full weapon.
Yeah, the full. I mean, I think we should have commented along with the full weapon, but yeah, the full weapon is just a fun, big, crazy shape. You know, I just imagine her smashing things with that thing.
You've managed to balance it remarkably well, even though like the actual balance of shape is crazy. Like it's huge compared to the body, and it's not like it's in the center of mass or anything, but using the lighter color at the top and avoiding putting too many dark shadows in really helps with balancing how it visually portrays weight. So yeah, it's well balanced. Okay, next we have Koto the boy with the apple core. Beware the apple core. What do you think, Matthias?
I think this one, I don't know what to say. It's really fun. It's just weird. It's I haven't seen a rotten fruit before in the contest. I think it was maybe one or two others that did something similar, but I think this one did it the right way. In my opinion, it hit the right notes. I can really see this creature being a part of either an animation or a game. It's like a creepy creature NPC that kind of, maybe it's like an unfortunate civilian or something that turned into a rotten apple core, was eaten by something. And then
or in a world with entirely fruit people, it's just like this is the undead version of a normal apple person, like your apple doctor Matthias that could have died and come back to life as an apple core.
Something like that, for sure. Yeah. That's just his apple Frankenstein, huh?
Yep. But I totally agree. Like, you immediately understand everything about the piece. Like, nothing's left sort of to the imagination, really. And like, it communicates so much personality without even having a full face. Like, just the mouth alone, this kind of like gaping hole in the face. It's got no eyes. It's got no nose, no real eyebrows, but it conveys this fantastic expression regardless.
Exactly. I think that's what would have made or break this character design, because if you didn't have the hat and if you didn't have the mouth, it'll just be this weird mannequin walking around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I guess going to criticism on that front, it's just because without those elements, there's few things which give it sort of structure overall, which is where we are starting to have these real difficult discussions of the whole point is that it's rotten and like, amorphous and it doesn't have like a nice clean shape to it. But then how much do you lean into that versus having like repeated shapes that you can see throughout, which gives you a better sense of symmetricality and that kind of thing. So it was very difficult, but I think like in terms of personally how I would take this further would just be putting in a bit more indication as to the repetition of shape between left and right, so that we get a better sense of I think it just conveys three-dimensionality better when you can see where one area on one side of the creature is mirrored on the other.
I think another comment would be, again, it's I guess essentially if you were to transform this into like a human, it would essentially be a naked zombie, and this is kind of like a naked apple core creature. And I think I would have liked to see some more apple skin elements, like maybe his arms weren't completely eaten, kind of similar to how he has his skin feet. He has the red of the skin on his feet. I would have liked to see some of that on his arms or on his shoulders or something to add a little bit more interest and variation, because all we really got is, well, I guess the rimline doesn't really count, but all we got is the bumps and the flesh. And whilst that is actually a lot of fun to look at, I think it can easily make it quite noisy, and I would have liked to see something different. What do you think?
So yeah, like there's the holes of the seeds in the chest, and I think developing those would have been a really good way to give it some landmarks that you can see throughout the design that break up the otherwise sort of monotony of wrinkly apple flesh. But yeah, this is like really picking holes because it's sort of how you want to approach this design. Because adding clothes or not adding clothes, like that's something which it's a very difficult thing to balance, because it makes total sense that it wouldn't have anything. It's just the apple core. You only have bits of skin on the top and the bottom, and everything in the middle is exposed flesh. So it's very hard to say, but yeah, in general.
Exactly. I mean, that's the difference between functionality and what we find visually pleasing.
Yeah.
So you have to have a balance. I didn't mean like you have to put on clothes on him, but just adding something.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, that's all my notes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's covered everything. In general, it's great. It's really wonderful.
Great render, by the way.
Yes, exactly. Okay. I'm not actually sure where this brings us to. Is this
number 3? It brings us to number 3, man.
Brings us to number 3. Oh, exciting! All right, let's go. Sanguine. Another one that we discussed for ages. Immediately, this I think has the most character of all of them. It's the most bombastic. She's got such an expressive pose and face. Like, there's no doubt what her character is going to be like. And I think that's really important with all of these. Like, personality, I think we put as one of the key judging points. And this really hits hard with personality. So that's my first thing that I love about it.
Yeah, I mean, the pose, the gesture, I think it's just really well balanced. Honestly, the proportions fits well with the character. The way her leg just like down into the ground as she sits on that bike, and when she leans her back and looks back and have that sass, I think that's quite cool.
Yeah,
and the material of the cherry flesh that she has is also really, really cool to look at.
Yeah, there's like wonderful subsurface and like refraction and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like following on from that, the use of the cherry element throughout, I think, is really strong. Like the details in this they impress me every time. You've got the bike, which is made out of the spokes on the wheels, stems from the cherry. the front. I don't know what this part would actually house on a motorcycle, but it's like an elongated cherry shape, and I just immediately recognized that cherry form with the slight dip in the top and the shine over the top. It makes perfect sense to relate cherry to automotive paint because of its luster. So it's a great example of like using the materials in a place that they make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then my favorite detail, I'll have to zoom in. My favorite detail is the eye, because they've given the eyes the cherry shape. So you've got the iris and this line going out from the side, and I think that's just fantastic. It's so clever. It's like a really small addition that it's lovely. It's just attention to detail in the best way.
Exactly. Also, the use of the leaves. I don't know how many people use the leaves. I mean, they did use some leaves material, but I think this one, the hair is fun. The ponytail idea is quite fun. The sort of leaf gloves with the little, I don't know what you call them, the little triangle frills.
Yeah, like the scalloping around the wrist.
Like even showcase that, yeah, this is also made out of leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then that's where my criticism comes in with for example, with the ponytail that she has. Her cherries are taking a lot of that weight behind. I think I would remove those cherries on the back of her ponytail and just have the leaves come out instead. I think that will make the weight and the balance and make the whole piece look more balanced, especially on her neck.
Yeah.
As well as those cherries are taking a lot of the attention from her head because they're about the same size.
Yeah, and essentially the head, we read the head as a cherry because of its color and its attachment to the stalk. So then having a real cherry next to it sort of feels odd. You're like, well, is the head supposed to be a cherry? And like now there's that contrast between the skin color and then the really deep purple of the real cherry. And I think it's just a bit distracting. So I think removing that would have made a lot of sense, and it would make the character more believable. Because at the moment it's sort of, you can imagine those really getting in the way when she's moving around. Are they part of her? Like, are they part of her skin? Would it hurt if you took them off, or is it just like hair? Is it potentially just like a headpiece that she's wearing and she can take off at any time? I think it opens up too many questions, whereas keeping just the leaves makes a lot more sense because she's already got leaf hair around her face.
Another thing is that I do actually like her attire a bit, such as the headband and her shirt. I think that's a nice. It got some nice, cute little details on there, and I don't know what exactly material that is.
But it uses the cherry stalk as like a little sort of pattern across it, and I think that relates nicely.
Right. Yeah.
Well, at least that's how I read it.
It subconsciously worked out for me, and it didn't distract, and it also matches with the bike a little bit, which kind of it kind of feels like it's organic. But this is the point I was trying to make was that whilst those elements work, the denim jeans does not work at all for me. It feels too much out of place. It's got this blue which just pops out of nowhere, and it doesn't really harmonize with anything in the piece.
Yeah, so like even the sky blue is weaker than it, and so it seems like a very strange place to put a single unique color. Like with a lot of these designs, I think you take the fruit and you realize that the fruit is made up with, like, generally it has a green element from the plant that it's grown off of, and then there's a unique color that embodies that fruit, and in this case it's the cherry pink purple, and then this blue, it's almost being treated as if it's one of those unique colors, but it has no relation to the actual fruit it's coming from, and so in the end we just found it very distracting. And it sort of works in a favor, it just keeps, you have the face, which is obviously the main focal point, and then I guess you just make the booty the other focal point by having it as a separate color. The eye always goes back there, but it feels
a cheeky way to get all the boys interested.
Yeah, exactly. But it feels distracting. And I think just bringing it to be either a more muted color so that it doesn't distract, or making it maybe even the green of the leaf and having another tie-in to the materials of the fruit would be a better choice for it.
I think I would have gone for the green, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that could have worked. But yeah, great work.
Yeah, really, really great. Okay, that means we're getting to second place. All right, Zanuck. Another little round of applause. This is fantastic because it popped up quite late to the end, close to the submission date. It popped up and I just went, damn! God damn!
Yeah,
it's awesome.
So yeah, I thought this was. I think this one almost took first place for me. It was such a tie, such a close tie. I mean, I thought that was her pose is strong. That she really feels like a pumpkin-like character. She looks like this kind of bully in her smile. It fits well with the sort of Halloween pumpkin face that she has.
Yeah, because the personality, when we're judging on personality, it's both how well the personality comes across, like in the design itself, but also how well that personality relates to the fruit you've used. So going back to the cherry, it's like cherries they feel like this kind of lipstick red. They've got that sexy vibe around them. So the sexy girl on the bike is a perfect fit. And then go to pumpkin, and you've got like these like beefy fruits that generally we just see carved with spooky faces in, and they feel like they're the sort of fruit that's going to try and bully you or try and creep you out or just be antagonistic in some way. So the personality and the vibe that this character gives off is perfect. It's a perfect match for that.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the use of the pumpkin gloves. I haven't seen that before, but the way it manages to balance itself with the rest of the piece is actually quite impressive because it's just three elements. You have the pumpkin head, and you have the gloves, and then you have a little bit on the shoes. But since she's such a, she feels so top heavy that the gloves manage to balance it all out, and it just, for me personally, works.
Yeah, really lovely. And then obviously the use of the leaves and stuff, like the wrist, the armband, I think is a great inclusion. I find it sort of, in terms of like branding all of the things that she's holding with a pumpkin, in this case I think it just works, but it's an interesting case where, like I was talking with the first one where she was holding the watermelon bag. I quite like the fact that you have a character that's got branding from things that are related to fruit rather than the very fruit that she is embodying. But in this case, because it's a human wearing fruit clothing, it makes much more sense that all of the stuff they're wearing is pumpkin themed. And she sort of feels like slightly cheerleader-y in a sense. It's like a mascot or something of pumpkins, but with this fantastic personality to max.
She feels more like a jockey to me. She'd be picking on me in the lockers, and you know.
Yeah, I didn't mean cheerleader. I meant mascot. That's what I was trying to remember. Like that that sort of like themed outfit. Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. So, and the balance of colors, simple but effective. I like the use of the negative shapes as well. So you have the orange, you have the green, and you have the brown, and then you have the skin color, and they all work very well, and you manage to blend them all together quite seamlessly. So nothing's too distracting, nothing is overpowering the other. They got a nice sense of balance, and you know which one's primary and which one's secondary and which one's tertiary.
Yeah. I also really like how you can choose either to look at the pumpkin head as the face or the character's face, and both of those feel balanced. It doesn't feel like one's out of like too far away from the shoulders and one's too close. And I think that's really clever because you've squished the human head down. Compared to the rest of the body, you might expect that to be quite a bit higher, but like you've really compressed the human part of the object, and that gives you room to put the pumpkin head on top and have it not look strange. So like blow your eyes and look from a distance and it looks like a character with a huge pumpkin head. And then you look closer and you see that there's a human wearing that as a hat. And it works just as well because it's still balanced. And it suits her thick, stocky frame because she's got a shorter neck and like a compressed face. And I think that's just a really good use of it.
The scratches on the gloves really adds a little bit of character as well. I know she's been into some trouble.
Exactly, yeah, it's lovely. And it shows that transition from dark to lighter flesh in the skin. That pumpkins have. In terms of criticisms, I actually noticed someone's called up the hatchet as a really great thing. I like the hatchet idea. I think it's good. But Matthias pointed out that in terms of shape alone, the stalk coming out of her head is almost the same size and same shape as the hatchet. And it now feels like you've got two elements of equal importance kind of fighting with each other. The stalk, I think, is a great inclusion. And then the hatchet is a really cool idea, but in that position, it just distracts from the stalk. And it's got like the same shape, but different material. And it's all just a little bit confusing. So that's my main criticism of that hatchet inclusion.
Yeah. I think it's hard to exactly criticize this character because it has a lot of things that works. I think from like maybe there's like at this point it becomes personal, like what I would change. Maybe there's some changes I would make with where I would add more pumpkin elements or less pumpkin elements. But from a technical point of view, I think just be a little bit more aware of proportions and anatomy. Just be careful with that, as well as I mean, I don't know how quickly and how much of a rush you were in, but I also would have liked to see this characters being a little bit more rendered. But I think at this point it becomes a little bit personal.
Yeah,
I'm just nitpicking.
And like the render up in the face where you've seen like the details been put in, I think is lovely. Like the texture across the pumpkin and the cracks coming down from the eyes. That's all gorgeous.
Yeah,
I'd have liked to see the seeds used a little more, like the pumpkin seeds. And I realised that the hair actually has a lot of that kind of gloopy internal pumpkin seed feeling. It's just you could push the texture of that slightly more to really capture the internal mush that you get from pumpkins. Because my experience with pumpkins is this very unpleasant stage at the beginning where you're just scraping out all this mush and it's slimy and sticky. And I quite like that you've got the dribble coming down from where the hatchet is. That captures that feeling quite well. And if you just brought that into the hair a bit more, I think would have been perfect.
All right, that's all my comments.
Yeah, that's it. So this is it. Drum roll or something. We're gonna go into the first place, and here it is.
Nice.
Nazufuka. Well done.
Well done, man.
So this is almost like it's like a bit of a sleeper design, because every time Matthias and I kept coming back to it as we refined down, we realized that we had nothing else to say, like nothing negative, because we started going into like nitpick mode. We're like, oh, this thing doesn't quite work. This thing is putting me off. And we kept coming back to this and being like, we just saw more details that made it better. What do you think, Matthias?
Yeah, I think this character, it just explains itself. It has, you see what you need to see. I think it utilizes all of the elements to its utmost potential, I think, personally. And there's nothing, it fits with the style. It's cute, it's funny. And I'm not going to say too much. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so for me, like every element of a coconut is sort of used in the way that we experience it. So you've got the hard outer shell, which is of course is going to be the tough armor usage, and then like coconut milk and like the soft, creamy, gentle flavor of the inside is embodied as this really cute, gentle little character sitting on top of the boar. The boar then has much less of that white usage because the boar is supposed to look like a much stronger and tough animal. And then you've just generally got like a really good use of the leaves from the plant throughout. The wear and tear on the body, I think is a great inclusion, and the three little dots from the coconut on the front of the boar. It's one of the things that we came back and noticed afterwards, and it's just another lovely inclusion. There's also the fluff, like the hair from the coconut under the boar's chin and on top of the character's hat. I think that's wonderful. Like that feels like pig fur to me, and it's sort of the kind of inclusion where I can see how you've looked at your reference for coconut and sort of analyzed what it reminds you of. What does the sort of the fluff on the outside of a coconut shell look like? Well, I definitely see the connection between those thick strands and like the thick hairs that you'd get on the bottom of a boar. So like all of these little links that I find within it, I think are fantastic, and like they all speak to the experience that we have with this object.
Yeah, exactly. The use of colors, you have a nice little trio. The brown makes up the primary part of the color design. The secondary and the tertiary is the white and the green. Now, I feel like the white and the green, and the white is more like the secondary, and then the green becomes tertiary. That becomes like the third thing you think about. And all of them are assigned a certain material that's quite obvious. So you have the brown is like the hard shell that you need to, that it's used as like a protective area, and the boar fits really well with that. The boar is very, very protected, and whilst the guy is less protected, and most of it is just mushy and soft skin, kind of like humans are, I guess. And so he's like protecting himself with the coconut, with a coconut helmet and a shield, and he has the little skirt that also protects his more susceptible areas, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then you have the green, which is more more of the aggressive part. So you have the green as the spear, and then the whip of the tail, and they also assign a certain shape as well, which is spiky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this is wonderful, and like you get a sense immediately of the synergy between the two characters, and for me that seems like it really highlights the contrast between the materials within a coconut. You have this incredibly hard outer shell, and then you crack it open finally, and you've got like soft, creamy inside, and that duality it's really bizarre. It's like the main element of that fruit, and so I think this is I think it really embodies that.
I think this is a very fun character. I think it really nails the fruit character idea that we had in our head. I don't really have like. Do you have any like critique or?
Critique would just be potentially a bit more form in the character. The little guy on the top, like his. I really like the fact that you've gone to embody coconut milk and like coconut cream and all that kind of just softness. His whole body is a soft rounded shape. I just think things like this leg could have a bit more volume, be clear where maybe a knee is, maybe a foot, that kind of thing. But these things only came to me after like quite a lot of time scrutinizing it. So
I think from a design standpoint, there's not much comment to have. It just comes down to the technical points, and that's just making sure that the light hits in the right places. That has the like I could see it. We could use some like highlights in the fleshy parts and utilize some more texture in the brown, and probably even add some more contrast.
Yeah,
and I think that's where it basically boils down to. So, but I think design-wise and story-wise, I think this one is very, very, very cool.
Yeah,
I can see a world that's being developed around this character.
Yeah, I immediately see a very compelling and consistent world that this character would exist in.
Yeah.
So
this is really cool.
Yeah. Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, super job to everybody. I mean, I know that everybody didn't. Some people would have liked to be in this top 10, and it was really, really hard at some points to like.
There's a bunch of ones that I need to go and give like shout outs after this because
yeah, absolutely, because we were looking through a lot and we were like trying our best. I mean, we were trying to be as objective as possible, but there's a lot of subjectivity happening as well because of what we personally think and our perspective on things and our personal beliefs and what we. I mean, I don't know. Since you wrote up the prompt, you stated what needs to be in the piece, but it was difficult. So technically, some might have been better in design, and some others might have been better. But
that's the thing. They've got like strengths in different areas, and we had to try and find a balance between them.
Yeah.
And a lot of visuals will come into that as well. Like it's really hard to say whether a design's been executed well when the idea may be strong and maybe could have been executed really well with different visuals, but then the visuals don't prop that up and support it.
So yeah. I think the biggest part was the design part of the the things, like both functionally and visually speaking as well.
Yeah.
So,
also, I realized there's a bunch of discussion in the chat, which I'm going to come back to, but I'm just going to quickly have a toilet break and then I'll be back. Matthias, if you want to start addressing some of the chat, because I think it's worth engaging with them at some point.
I will.
Because we have just been ignoring.
I was trying not to look too much in the chat because people started like commenting a shit ton. So
Yeah. Okay, I'll be back in a bit.
Okay, I'm trying to scroll up it a little bit. So again, guys, super good job on the work, and we are super happy that there were so many people posting. It's been around, I think it was 130 posts, if not more. And yeah, super happy to see what people have been coming up with. All right, so I heard that there was a bit of a discussion in the chat. Boba Fett expressed his concerns. Let me see if I can read that. Always positive about this top 10 of you guys. It's super weird. I can't wrap my mind around this top 3. They are not the best designs out of all the submissions. I'm a big fan of your design choices, Thomas, but this gets me really angry for the people who have great submissions. I hope the next contest would be have more objectivity. I can see why some people would have been upset, and I kind of saw this from before we would have jumped in, because there's going to be people that's going to disagree and some people that's going to agree. So it's really hard to figure out which ones we wanted to be the top 10 and which one would not be a part of the top 10. So there's just 2 of us. If we had more judges, if there was at least like 10 judges, I think the whole top 10 would have been completely different. And the view of what Thomas would have had would also be very different from how others would have seen it. So this is mainly from Thomas's, but also my feedback to it as well. So,
hello, I'm back. What are we responding to right now?
Responding to Boba Fett's comment at the top. He expressed some concerns. I don't know if you saw the comments.
All right, let's have a look. Can't wrap my head around top 3. Not the best designs out of the submissions. I'm a big fan of your design choices, but this really gets me angry for people who have great submissions. Hope the next one will be more based on objectivity. It's very difficult to say, because essentially, yeah, we're trying to look at it on all different angles. So objectivity is a difficult thing to describe, where it's like, I suppose objectivity will be how well executed something is, or on paper how well something sort of hits all the design fundamentals or something like that. We've tried to do that, but based on the points that we listed out in the contest brief, so things like personality. And it's very difficult to be objective with that, because things will appeal to us differently. And a character type that we're very familiar with will not stand out as much as a character type that we're less familiar with, for example. So that's the problem with having a human as a judge. I can't be even with like what things impress me, because I haven't experienced the exact same things as everyone else. So I understand your problem, but it's very difficult. And like having 2 judges is very good for that, because we ended up having a lot of consensus on things. And it's kind of like, I think what we ended up choosing felt like the designs that neither of us could like give sort of arguments against, because some things one person would really like, one thing another person would really like, and then we would discuss it and find problems that sort of arose when it was basically consumed by different people. So in a sense, these are the things that feel like they hit on all the marks in a way that would be successful everywhere, rather than being successful specifically for one person.
I think a person made a really good point. Step 1, draw a circle, actually had a really good comment on this, which he or she says, art is subjective by nature. No matter how fair judges in any contest are, people will always skew towards their own personal style. I think the judges have done a marvelous job here, and congratulations to the contestants for putting themselves forward and making art for others to enjoy. And this is exactly what it's about. It's not, obviously there's going to be different tastes in the art, so it'll be different.
Yeah. But Sexy Cherry Girl is just like sexy cherry, nothing creative in the design. So I think that one really relies on visual design a lot more than maybe things that you would sort of have on paper.
Yeah.
Because it's the way it uses the forms, materials, and shape of the cherry throughout. That's what makes it really impressive. And I'd say the same with the pumpkin. So I'm sort of curious, like, I would like to know what you would list as your top three.
I think Boba Fett made a really has the opportunity to make for a really good discussion, because I think what Boba Fett, I don't know, he's not here to talk with us, but it would have been interesting what his thoughts are, because, for example, he expressed that the what was it? I think it was the Apple guy. Was it the undead apple, right?
Yeah.
And that one is really technically superior render, to a lot of them. Like, executed really well. It has a really cool movement. But I think design-wise, which is what this contest is all about, which is character design, I think design-wise it's not as strong as all of the others. Because then again, it's not just all about detail. And this is where we had a lot of difficulty, because you have different styles and different amounts of detail. You have one relying more on simplicity and more movement, some relying more on detail and adding more and more stuff. Some relies more on functionality, and that's where the human error comes in and where subjectivity comes in, because we are going to have a different view on what we think is cool or not.
Yeah, and we don't have a specific context that these things are being used for. It's like if this was a competition where it's like design the best Froot character that would fit into a Dark Souls game. Well, there's hands down no contest. Like, this is the winner. This is the only one that feels suitable for that. And it, like, the first thing I saw when I went in, it was like, this feels like one of the mushroom people in the Dark Souls. Like, I can totally see myself being attacked by this thing. But that's not what we were going for. We didn't have a specific context, because that would be too restrictive. We want people to like explore that, and so the natural outcome is that we can't have an objective way of like choosing which is the best, because none of them have a unified purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming this is what they meant with the apple fruit girl. And yeah, again, it's another one that we struggled with a lot.
Oh yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, again,
you're forgiven. Don't worry. It's absolutely fine. Like, this is the sort of discussion that's really useful to have, and it's also why we made sure that we like want to just describe all our thoughts that we went through when judging, because there was a lot of discussion about it.
But yeah, all in all, it's very interesting to see what other people thought about it. I thought, I mean, honestly, but it was really, really difficult.
Yeah. I'm just reading more of the comments.
By the way, hello, Hugh. It's good to have you in here, man.
Hello. They need to judge the execution shape design too, and those two had a lot of it. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, it'd be interesting to essentially do a reorder in terms of like specifically just like we could do like a different ranking based on purely the ideas, and I think that would be cool, because a bunch of submissions had some very cool ideas in that then couldn't deliver on like the usage of those elements of the material and shape and all that kind of stuff. And so like I plan to showcase that next. Essentially, I'm going to go through all the designs and talk about my favorite bits of them, because if you're going for idea alone, like there was one which stood out as one of the sort of most fun ideas, or the most bombastic ones. It was the orange that had unpeeled a segment of itself and was pissing orange juice into a cup. Like, it was fantastic. It was really great, and it stuck in my mind because it was such a charismatic idea. Like, I couldn't forget it. So if we like judged it purely on that, it would be interesting to see how it would completely change the listing of it. And then of course we could then switch to judging purely on how recognizably it is a is the fruit it is. And again, that one's like a weird thing to do, because some of them like are almost, they look like the fruit with stuff added to it. And in terms of design, that might not be such a good approach, because it's not really doing clever transformative things, but it is at least very clear what fruit it is. And you saw our criticism of Sanguine's piece mostly was just, I think we might take away that cherry, but if we were judging purely on how well it communicates the the fruit, well, adding the cherry means it's undisputably a cherry design, but it doesn't necessarily make it better in terms of its balance with the rest of the character. So
actually, I wrote down some notes here about what I was thinking, at least when I was looking at the characters. So I was looking at originality, shape, color, functionality, render, gesture, and composition. Those are one of those things, because I think one thing you need to be very careful about is that one person may lean more or be more biased towards functionality. One person might be more biased towards shape. One person might be more biased towards gesture. And I'm probably more like biased towards one or the other in these categories for sure. And that's where the balance comes in. And we're thinking which one hit one of the better marks in terms of balance. But then it also comes down to personal taste. And I think the personal taste bit kind of, that's probably where our subjectivity comes in with the first place winner, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really difficult.
Also keep in mind, before I say anything else, just because you were not in the first place, or if you weren't even mentioned in the top 10, does not mean that your art is worse than these top 10. It just means that we didn't pick you out, and that's just based off our personal taste.
Yeah,
basically.
Like,
there are pieces that had way more likes than the one we chose.
Yeah.
And they had way more followers, for example, and that's probably based off of what other people personally think.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that nobody feels like they're better or worse just because of a certain number. It just comes down to personal taste.